Right. Good morning. So we'll start with making a mandala offering as a token for requesting the teaching, and then Geshe will lead the way with refuge in bodhicitta, and then we'll live happily ever after. So let's begin with shut up. All right. Sa-shi pu-ki ju-shi-me-to tam-ri-ram-ling-shi ni-de-gen-pa-di Geshe Meteo Girdokunamda Shin La Chupa Shoidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyataya
Sangye
Chonan
Chedang
Sogi Chonam La Chachu Badu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Chushegi Betonangi Dola Penche Sangye Dropa Sho
Sangye
Chonam La Chachu Badu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Chushegi Betonangi Dola Penche Sangye Dropa Sho
Sangye
Chonan
Chedang
Sogi Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyasuchi Dagi Chishigi Besanangi Dola Penchi Sangye Dropa Sho
Kangi Tuzini Zone Tawa Tamje Pambichir Tambichun Tenze Kodam Kela Changse Lo. Good morning, everyone. Khuzakar. Lapta.
La
Khuzakar.
Tens La
Srinanga Mimara.
말에 배실교 콘솔 야긴 그래 콘솔인데
Panjab.
그래
Yagatsola Mixi Testilius.
So we have a few Indian guests and friends with us today, so namaste everyone. Tashtila in Tibetan, which means welcome. Hello and welcome. So did you guys come up from, do you guys come up from Brisbane, or do you live here on the coast? From Brisbane, that's cool. Just visiting for the day? School holidays, that's cool. That's cool. So do you have like a Sikh temple at Brisbane, or one down at South Brisbane, or? 네, 콘솔 괜찮아요. 야, 계시라 거리트.
Tene Yablolaya na Topuni Savani. Keranilaya. Konzu Europe Nereshra. And Testilius.
Geshe said that also together with us, there are two new friends of Geshe, apparently from Europe somewhere. So, hi, Tashtile.
Other Daya. Tene the Jagatsolaya Mixi Testilius said same thing Choji is raw. Ninga Chinjun Kondene Nanchulaya Jang on the Nanchugi Dembati Dembashaka Munris, 안 템바 샤자면 다 야가파비일이야 컨트롤 아니 까지 두리 mam부지 난시니 TV 공부시니 아니 공기 TV 공부시비 람디 아니 ngaran solaya 아니 랍jetting이 템바디 차고면서 아니 딘디 차니야 인스 니니 ngaran jam비 피 쇼디 아니 야가르 펜드로스 쇼츠 체니 간서 따지 베기 난딩기 출루버 속에 장식 쇼디 야가르 펜드루 쇼디 차고레스 아니 야가르 펜드루 쇼디 따가스 비기지 대바지고 체니 로데 마임바 오늘 타네기 준세 아니 지 릭바 아니 딘티 마부 쇼지게 아니 무연에서 때나 파시네 아니 참바데 제비 아니 셰럽 장당게 아니 송요연서 쇼직베 아니 용초보 딘디직 송요연서 아니 야가기 학던도 직 삽전도래네 아니 야가서 토온디게 직 간지초 딘디직 토네 아니 쿠지 용도스.
So Geshe is always happy to meet some people from India. First of all, from young age, whatever he studied, whatever he trained it, was based on the teachings of the Buddha that came from India, the land of the Aryas. This is how India is referred to often in Buddhist language or in Tibetan language, the land of the Aryas. So Buddha Shakyamuni started off in India, and he went through a great deal of hardship in his spiritual practice. There were periods of hunger and thirst and so forth. And at the end, he was able to he himself became Buddha and gave us the teaching stuff we study now. But also on top of that, whatever we study is also based on the writings of great Indian masters, the great Pandits of Nalanda monastery that used to exist in India. So when we then follow the teachings of the Buddha, we don't follow those teachings just based on faith, but we also develop a rational approach, a reasoned approach to the teachings of the Buddha that assists us to develop states of mind such as love and care for others. So those teachings that come from the Indian tradition, from the Nalanda tradition, are really inspiring. Kind of this rational approach to developing love and care for others is really inspiring. So whenever Geshe is meeting some people from Indian origin, kind of his heart is, full of admiration for those Indian masters and also, of course, for the Buddha.
틸다 아니 안델레니 나간조 난렌다기 아니 펜루소 콘다틴티 샹야 총요레스 단단한 참데 트요머다 아니 콘다 게지 케바 게기 아니 콘다디 델 페스바레스 아니 간조 단다 아니 상마 아니 더 춥드 유비나니 구스 비길이야 샹 트요레스 이냐다 론덴다 네양기 깽기 단다 가데샤마도 단 요보 수페투게 딘지디 도정가라 야부페 총송 삼구였으라.
So you have made your way up to this space, we call it the Gompa, and you came probably through the Nalanda Masters Garden. So we have of the 17 great Pandits of Nalanda, we initially commissioned 8 to be made. So we have 8 out of the 17, but then we also commissioned the remaining 9 to be made. So the statues are made in Vietnam by an expert statue maker. But of course, due to COVID-19, everything is kind of stacked up. Everything is kind of on a holding pattern. So we're still waiting for the statues to arrive in Australia. It will probably take some time, but at some point we'll have all of them with us.
수수기 따지 출룩다 출룩 생기다 가르치 안 간다치 따수 간다 예메 톨이야 냠뇽 체드 페바디 샘디니 쿠지스 딘자당 안주 melaya draw melaya 치 공에 젠로 디 카르레스 라운디 치 규페 균을 뺀저 마이바 난기 피기 잠바다 제와 아니 남주 셰럽 생긴디다 and draw melaya ta go ngeching nobody chagoyansa and dinti ge chambat jawa sherab 야 야기 땅야기 아니 즉 랍샤다 마존나 랍샤 약슈지 아니 좀 된디기 랍샤 디임바디다 텐산 잠벨레 나노다 세르 로고레스 텐자 딘디 톨레 소스 잠바이나 인지미 소수 비기 아니 출루디 제보 잡고야세 균센 싸우니 요마 야오름지 뒤도 남북군도 송구여레스라 텐자 야갈 펜루 속이 아니 송샤비기 아니 송좀 드즈칼이야 안 테스직 식도바나 야자 야다마 소좀 메제나노라야 펜도 용그레스 라디 야자 야다마 랍투 그레스 라.
So as you mentioned, kind of you brought your kids along today to see how people practice religion or practice spirituality in other traditions. So Geshe really appreciates that. This is a really good or nice approach, because when we look at what we do need as human beings, we do need to develop love and care for others. We do need to develop wisdom, and we have the capacity to do it as human beings, the capacity, the ability to develop love and kindness and wisdom. So when we then train in certain methodology for giving rise to the states of mind, Geshe feels that the teachings that are found within that system are excellent teachings, that are of the best teachings that you can find for developing loving kindness and care for others and wisdom. And also, as his owner says, you can always study systems such as this without thinking that you need to change your religion or to convert to another religion in order to put it into practice. You can definitely stay within the confines of within whatever spirituality you follow, but still use techniques for developing loving kindness and care for others and wisdom. Geshe reckons that with great certainty, 100% certainty, that such an approach is beneficial.
피기기 다지 착당 모성래 된 간지 아니 직 서비 만당와다 잠직 만당와라 때니 난 잠블리야 강가 테디가 버디 시부 슈지레스 딘자 잠지 생이디 아주 출루바 간다징 바이네야 아니 잠지 슈송고다스 잠지디 개치부 슈지 딘자 다 잠지 장원디게 인짐니 소수 출루 찍바기 피기게 아니 지 랍자 마임바 출룩 생게 아니 잠지 랍자리야 아니 따투바이나 간지 통자체 아니 안 퇴자체 구양 로야드다 자시자당 버려왔어 딘자 비기 추킬랭이 지임바이나 따로 만두 추킬랭인 속에 아니 지 추근난기 랍자 야슈디 잠블린 칠레야 팽인게 랍자 디디 아니 소수 보고 붙을래야 인치 민치 라바이나 아니 마웅발래야지 보고 붙을디 소수 메시근 돌람자 마임바 잠블린래야 펜디 두퉁인기 아니 미차야가 레바요로스로 어 딘디 sam당 야디 다 남비 쇼나래야 빼 망부 송요레스.
Now, looking at the time that we live in at the moment, and we experience great technological advancement by different scientific developments, and we can definitely look at the reality of what's happening in different parts of the world. And we can see that we do experience problems and difficulties as human beings, and the problems and difficulties that we experience are by and large attributed to anger and attachment and ignorance. Not having enough patience, not having an adequate degree of love and care for others. Certainly, difficulties and problems that we experience as human beings are attributed to not having enough care for others. So then when we look at the means, the tools that we find in religious practices or teachings, those that teach the importance of loving kindness and care for others, then we need, Geshe feels that we need to take them as practical approaches, not just teachings that are found in a religion or one religion, but to take them as something that we need to develop in our own mind, regardless of whatever spirituality we follow, or if we choose to follow no religion at all. So we don't need just to limit ourselves to whatever we follow in our tradition, in our religion, but if you find ways that you can expand your mind, that you can expand your heart, to draw from teachings of other traditions and being able to develop a greater degree of love and care for others, then that would be, Geshe feels, the best advice that you can give to yourself, but also the best advice that you can give for others. So we study, we expand our mind. So if you also, particularly as a parent, if you also then pass it on to your children, that approach of not just having to limit yourself to what you find in your tradition, but use whatever tools and means you can to draw from other traditions to make your mind vast and extensive, then not only it's going to benefit them in terms of being able to cope with life or to develop a greater degree of happiness and well-being on a personal level, but it will be also beneficial to the world at large.
데르다 베나 벤준 직시바는 남비 쇼낭라야 남비 쇼낭라야 비기기다 냠네 제단 송원디기 아니 직 땡인진다 신이 접단 거지 송거레스 디 망제지 베다 남바디 베나 힌두 출루레 남비 출루드 사바인자 콘주기 베기 송단 다가랑 추케딩이 빼망보레스 다가랑 추케지네 아니 로존당 그런 법 빼망보레스라 안 텔레 넘베갑 아니 수수탄다 아니다 메릴라 남주리언자 수수 남주된지네니 아니 야기타야 가리네 용거로스라 두신 로고레스라 남바이나 두신 로고레스.
So then when you look at the approach that you find in Buddhist scriptures, in Buddhist scriptures, you find techniques for example, developing concentration, a particular type of concentration that is called shamatha, or calm abiding concentration. So most of those techniques were passed on into the Buddhist tradition, or arrived into the Buddhist tradition from its origin, the Indian tradition, the Hindu traditions that existed at the time of the evolution of Buddhism. So those techniques, as the Buddhist tradition is, you can say, newer than some Indian or Hindu traditions, then many of those trainings were taken on and passed on into the Buddhist tradition. And then some, you can say that there were some changes that were made or some improvements in some areas.
아니 지금 송레스 딘디지톤 당한 로종세디 슈거스라 디 로종세.
Anyway, what we do here now during the Sunday morning teachings is we follow a text that is called Mind Trainings Like the Rays of the Sun. So this text was composed by an Indian master, composing a commentary to another text, and this text is based on the writing of Indian masters. So the system is teaching us how to train our mind.
들다 당이 가시 직시바이나 간주 로종 슬라운디 로종 슬라비칼야 로종 로 비 로세디 원전다 로이 원전디 친나 니게 비기다 직 미디비 쇼레 남비 쇼레 쇼지기 띵사보친 송여러스 라다디 난기 다직 만줄래야 고약 로 가르랜도 무고약 로 가르도 디에체네 무고약 로데 다직 자마다 마순 소약 탑들래야 로종라 민 디타그도스.
So this genre of teaching is called mind training. So it teaches us how to train our mind, how to train our awareness. So in order to do so, first of all, we need to recognize what awareness is. We need to recognize our own mind. And as such, when you look at the way of recognizing our mind, there are of course, different explanations coming from the Buddhist tradition, coming from non-Buddhist traditions. So what we then need to do is to train in order to recognize our mind better. But also what this system teaches us what we need to do and what we need not to do, what state of mind we need to have and what state of mind we do not want to have. So we take that presentation and we take it on into a training, into a system that is called mind training, or in Tibetan, lojong.
Tenzada dire pena gojulo da mogujulo di kal teni yechi goris laundi tanganzu lengi samgong la ya deva dan dunga mende ba chi yoras ro deva di kal teni yungu yore ani kolong chile ten lo chile ten ta deva yungu yore dunga thamandu ya dia ani pi kolong lo chile ten ro shimju yawo china yungu yores pena nganzu sabe mandang wa ina sesam singe di sebe mandang wa ina nam jin ba ina ya chambu yong ya bekhabu ani chi phama phutu yin ba ina ya sebe mandana chambu yong ya bekhabu gen ta getu yin ba ina parala ya sesam tes chi khema tu na ani nyogda yong de ya ani chi yulong ina ya ro jakab de jakab para yin ba ina ya sesam gu mandana pedi ani nyogda shu cha de tinza ta sesam gi lo di sebi gi nyamlen di shukcher tanya ya ta control zo di control nyon tango das ta control nyon tang gi rimba dia ani nambi shona ta be mambu son yores.
So just to give you an example of things that we need and some things that we do not need, states of mind that we want and states of mind that we do not want. All of us innately are seeking happiness and well-being, and none of us wants to suffer. So then when we start to look at the origin of the happiness, the well-being that we seek, where does it come from? Well, we find that it mainly depends upon the type of motivation that we bring into the actions that we take. And likewise, when we look at the unsought suffering or pain, the things that do not work well for us, where do they come from? Again, we recognize that mostly they come and depends upon their rise and depends upon a certain motivation that we develop. So when we look at our situation, for example, we can see that there are situations in which we respond to with not enough patience. We don't have an adequate level of patience. So when we don't have enough patience, we see that we experience difficulties and problems to begin with. When we look at the people around us, we can see that because of not having enough patience, we have problems in our families, problems between, for example, ourselves and our children, ourselves and our family members. Or also you can say that because not having enough patience, you can have issues or problems between a teacher and a student. Or also when we look at problems that we experience domestically or also between one country and another, again, you can say that many of them are attributed to not having enough patience. So when we then take up the practice of patience, the main thing that we do, of the main things that we do, is we put in opposition to anger in order to reduce anger. And as such, there are many approaches to that that gradually bring anger down in order to then practice patience.
Kawkalaya sabas laundi ge chi kyong ke go sordengi pe mambu yores di nambe shona ngone ge chi sabegi lojong chiondi ge sabas di kyong ke chi puchremodes sabe nenga zo di kien kandrajila trebaina ya ani mi kan namgyur kandrajin thongba ina ya sosu ge semdi kontru shawan masharya cheti sobi nyamning ki nenga tartukwa sem di kontru shawan masharya cheti tireshas.
But then we also need to look at the way that we approach the development of patience, because we might have our own idea of what patience means. Often it seems for many people that patience, to practice patience, means that you allow things to arise that kind of, even if it's faulty, even if it's a problem, you just let that be. That, if someone is creating problems for you, then you just take it on. Whatever fault there is, you take it on. But then when you look at the way that the practice of patience is explained in the Buddhist tradition, it is not just that. What the practice of patience means is that whatever condition you encounter, whatever experience you have with another person, whatever might be the physical expression, the body language, you do not allow that to disturb your mind, not allowing for mental disturbances to arise, not allowing anger to arise. This is what patience means. So it's not simply just copting abuse or harm that is inflicted upon you. It is mainly about not allowing your mind to be disturbed, not allowing anger to arise.
그래서 the law 종 제발이야, law 종 제발이야, law 디 종 조자 비행 안주 다지 아니 샘 디비리야 지 가돔 지야리 샘 교바 땅에 디 레라고 자원이 요 말았어. 까 대깔이 잡고 뒀어. 안주 내가 나신 대깔이 잡고서 대까지 두르케 투야게 서빙 얌내지면은 안 대드럽도 뭐 뒀어. 배는 내가 질레바 있는 양 코타기야기 비 아니 서버지면은 안 내가 대드럽도 어디 지원디게 남비 쇼나라야 개체시 지디 서버 되니지 장바 제와 셔럽로 타도온디 아니 추랍도 남지기 셔럽 다 디디 다 남비 쇼나니다 개체시 진 송고도스.
So then we train our mind in taking up certain states of mind and putting a stop to other states of mind. And the training is not easy at all. Actually, it's quite difficult to train our mind. And also in the process of mind training, we need to have patience. Without patience, we'll not be able to go far with training our mind. Not only we need patience with our own mind when we train our mind, of course, we consider just as well, we need patience with whatever we do, with the work that we do, with other things that we do. Without patience, we're not going to be able to do our work well. So then the things that we develop from a Buddhist perspective or in our Buddhist practice, in the practice of mind training, are things like patience and love and care for others and wisdom that distinguishes phenomena, the way the things that exist. Particularly when you look at the most important thing that is regarded in the system of the Buddhist system, the most important thing is regarded as wisdom, the development of wisdom.
아들 당연 참는 마 남중앙서 로디가서 참는 마 지금 슈긴스 니버 신진진이 배열에 삼비권 냠술랑제 땜반이 셋.
So with that in mind, we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. Sorry. So as we said, we're looking at mind training like the rays of the sun, and we're now going to look at what is to be put into practice through contemplating the advantages of concern for others. So as we read through the text, it is based on the 7-point mind training. So the instruction that is found in the 7-point mind training is meditate on the great kindness of all.
대다디 현진진 pen 삼비권에 냠술렘바 땜바 다 현진진 세 로디 현진진 세디 다 잠발라자나 지기요레 닌질라자다 지기요다 진진 제당디 다 따당 초니는 용거로스라.
So when it says what is to be practiced through contemplating the advantages of concern for others or cherishing others, did I jump out on Shemba de Caroline? So here, when we think of the advantages of concern for others or of cherishing others, you can look at it from two perspectives: from the perspective of love or loving kindness, and from the perspective of compassion. These two attitudes, loving kindness and compassion, are two attitudes of having concern for others, cherishing others.
제 동아의 나삼비기 로디 진진 차고레스 디 닌지레스로 대와도 대나 삼비 로디야 진진레스 디 레야 참바세고라스 딘자다 디 뒤견den기 수수라니 대와도 대나 치마로 냠바다 수수라니 동아 짜오니님 따치 마요 쇼삼삼기 로디 난줄라야 땡기니 요로스 다 데파 카페니 란자 마임바 아니 셴라야 아니 로틴지 게야 디다 셴진징 로스 오딜라고레스.
So there's two aspects of loving kindness and compassion. Both of them are integrated in an attitude of concern for others, a self-cherishing attitude. So when we wish others to not have suffering or pain, may they not have that. We call that that state of mind compassion. And compassion is an attitude of cherishing others or wishing others to have happiness, to be well, is another attitude of cherishing others. This is what we call love or loving kindness. So when we develop them, we then first of all look at ourselves, and we see that just in the same way that I myself do not want to suffer, do not want to have pain, just like me wanting to have happiness, I can shift my focus to others and see that others are just like me. So we then extend that sense of wishing for happiness and not wishing for suffering, not just for ourselves, but for others. And this is what we call an attitude of cherishing others with loving kindness and compassion.
That tigni ta shenjin sagi ta dindri lodi chamba da zebi lodi soso rani le tsuchi bu cho mayimba shen la ba ka cho shen la chosa dianji sosu gi chobo chomo so da sosu phama pinji so da kanji sosu begi da ji chaksa gi yul so da ji ani chogri wa ji bu je mayimba ani 대바 대바단 동아문데 비심지 요도 졸아봐 미니 삼로 든지 땅바텔야다 신진진 삼로 세토슈드 차고레스 더 든지 삼로 땅바이나 아니 페요 카리어레세티 로 페요 카리어세 디시고레스.
So then the orientation that we develop is not just focusing on ourselves, wishing ourselves to be happy, to be well, and not to have suffering and pain. Our orientation changes. We shift the focus also to others. And we do not focus only on those who are close to us, family members, friends, children, partner, and so forth. If we change our orientation just to them, it means that our orientation is still involved with attachment. So we don't limit our orientation to just those, but we develop the sense of concern for others, loving kindness and concern for others, to include all sentient beings. And if you do that, that's the highest level of cherishing others that you can develop. And this section explains the benefits of developing that attitude of concern for others, a self-cherish and others cherishing attitude.
There's the penyu zoro di nganzugi semgamla ya dewa dan dunga mundeba ji yobanza dewa druya gi shitsa yakshu di pi ta shenjinzen deres dunga seyagi ya shitsa yakshu di shenjinzen samlo dichagores dinza dindi yabu jobana ani dewa ngang yongtoya dunga ransing ba shidroyachi yungures o dichik sungodas.
So the benefits of developing that attitude of concern for others and other cherishing attitude begins with recognizing that we are seeking happiness and we want to avoid suffering and pain. So the best foundation that you can create for your own happiness is an attitude of cherishing others. And similarly, the best foundation that you can create for getting rid of suffering and pain is an attitude of cherishing others. So if you develop that attitude of cherishing others, naturally, whatever you wish for will come to pass.
There is the Kaya Layo, the medicine dinaloya, Pendo di 진징 로 딘디질이야 공디 땜바이나 소수기 샘디 고양부 최고서레스 로 고양부 먼저 부스도잖아 착단 슈치타온디 아니 피 착사지를 레온디 착사지다 단사지여바나 가드는 샘디지 어 차마니비 소르치 로 아니 야랑랑 소르다 마기바 소르치 망부 용야디 아니 착단 글로디 슈치타에 왕기 용기여서레스 디 진생 상로디 찬임 따야기 로디 가주스고 컴투바 디츠기 아니 착단세디 마뇽르조 델테니 아니 루코양보다 박페부 소디 용기여서레스로
So then we'll look at the development of cherishing others in a very practical way. We can say that the more we habituate the mind with cherishing others, the more our mind is made relaxed and peaceful. Opposite to that, when our mind is still involved with anger and attachment, when we see the way that we interact with others or we respond with anger to some and attachment to others, we can recognize how our mind is not a balanced state of mind. That makes the mind unhappy. If you have many occurrences of anger and attachment, you can recognize how your mind is going through those different, going through the motions of being happy or being over the kind of excited, over the top, and unhappy, or moody, or without energy, and so forth. We can see how a state of mind that is not balanced is reacting to situations in that unbalanced way. So then when we develop an attitude of cherishing others, we bring about balance to our mind. And as such, anger and attachment start to decrease. And when anger and attachment decrease, you find that your mind is made more relaxed, more vast, more spacious.
디 딘디기 따지 냠네 그 름바 용야라야 딘디기 가서 따지 개내진 그 로디 랑귤라야 뚜야라야 갔다고 그랬는데 꼴라 가든치고 곰고르세 다 칼카부 페어스라 칼카부 여데네야 개치슈 줄라 통온디 칼카부 차거도스 칼카부 delaya 동nen 체토바나 디기 잡로라야 자세자 담바 아니 펜도징기 자와지 용구여레스 가와있는 가두는 용구여레스라
So then when we look at the stages by which we bring about that balance to the mind, if we ask ourselves, what do we need to do in order to make that happen? The text says, meditate on the great kindness of all beings. Meditate on the great kindness of all. So this is a difficult thing to do. And yet we need to do it. If we put it into practice, if we persevere with doing that, if we bear with that, we will be able to see that not only will be able to gradually increase our appreciation of the kindness of others, but we'll also be able to bring more balance to our mind.
디존다 콘라 가든셔다 콘 탐체로야 가든셔지 간다지 곰고레세 제와데 용거로 와서라 용고래 딘디 제와 여바나 제월 때니 렌 레그리 렌라 때니 아니 다 셔럽 남주지 용거로 와서라 두 신이다 로단지 인사리.
So the text says, meditate on the great kindness of all. This is from the 7-point mind training. So then the first question that might arise is, how do I meditate on the great kindness of all? So if such a question arises, you'll also find answers to that question. Your wisdom will increase if you start asking those questions. How do I meditate on the great kindness of all beings?
소소리 셴비기다 지 무참말로기다 tum제 소리지 무참말로기를 때니 안 단단한서 지 대기다 댐바친 대투야디 메셴기 가든리마도 소수기 전샤바지 원에 섬단다 요마라스 딘디로 섬단 총산이 변의 소수기 남용아 소수 추부바가 동고 좀바 있느냐 추부바 간디 추부바가 약부 쓸내야기 아니 gyugyen yonsu zoba di shenla teni yonggo dos. Ro chungsan da chesan sina dagarang res. Jinza kari yinba di pena susugi lu nga yiksam dia ani chi shen pamala teni chubgo dos. Tenza kanji sosu rani chikbu toni yongshay che mewanza shen teni yonggo yawanza ani shen kadin chenpo yinba di odu samul tangway na tende ra chubgo sa res. Ro.
So when you start thinking of the way to meditate on the great kindness of all beings and developing that great sense of appreciation to them, you can start with, for example, thinking about your living here in this place, in this country, let's say. We enjoy a degree of happiness and comfort, those conducive conditions. And we can only enjoy them because we depend upon others, because others provide us with the conditions for the experience of comfort and well-being. So if we think about it in a really simple way, just as simple as, for example, being able to pick up a glass of water and drink it. When you think of the cause and conditions that play a part in just you being able to pick up a glass of water and drink it, you can see that actually those cause and conditions were created by so many other living beings that made it possible for you to enjoy just that simple thing. And if you think about it to a greater degree, then when you think of whatever you have on the physical, verbal, and mental level, your body, speech, and mind, you can first of all recognize how they can come to be only in depending upon others. Like, for example, all those things that were provided to you by your parents, your body, speech, and mind. Whereas if you think of being able to pick up a glass of water just by yourself, or whatever you have related to your body, speech, and mind, being completely alone or being able to achieve that only by yourself without depending upon others is impossible. So through recognizing how we are dependent upon others, whatever we use is related to others, we can then come to appreciate the kindness of others.
Samakaden Chimbo, some goddess lounge, Semnalaya Chikpe, Kabdulian, Duna Lion and Rodi, Suzu Magasajor, that Dragigoras, Suzu never cheating, Dragor, that D, the patient Manchel, Shergrada, in a that D Tolia, some down that D, and the pig Drata, Yen said D, Kinjig Tony, Kurishabaji Madobi, Koran Tamboni, any Dracha Devatan, Tamboni Yen Cha Devaji. So in the Yomaris, the Nambishon, the Sewshu and Sonyers, Tinza, the Genji Tony, Dachawa in a Yanko, and you Genji Denny, Yacha Yatama, Nin Curiores, Curtugris. Ni Shuji by Naya, tell a Shuji Chawa in a Yan, Genji Tony, Dacur Sigurdas. Tinza Shuji be Dada Nins and Yenjig, some Shuk Chambu Shuji Kedadi, and the kanji Pugyan Rimbuda, and it pig Muyo Netsu, Gugan Kalden, Jungu Yametolia, Samlo Dam Matu Bigi, and Genji Tony, and it Danin Chieg, Lo Shuk Chambodi, Leviores.
Or another point that can come up in your mind when you think of meditating on a great kindness of all is starting to think of those who actually are those that you regard as people that you dislike. How are they kind to you? So we have those that we dislike, those that we might even see as enemies, those that harm us in one way or another. Well, whatever might be the relationship that we have with others, they could be our friends, or they could be those who are close to our heart. They can be our enemies. I think that, sorry, so Geshe said that whatever might be that relationship, it depends upon conditions. It's not that friends and enemies exist as friends and enemies from the very outset, but they became friends and enemies. It depends upon certain conditions. And those conditions are subject to change. When we think of how easily in some situation, someone that you dislike, a hamdoer, an enemy, can turn into your friend when conditions change. Also, someone that is close to your heart, it's enough sometimes for a slight condition to change and then to become someone that you dislike, someone that even you regard as an enemy. So those conditions can change so easily, and yet without thinking about it in a long-term way or in a vastly extensive way, we hold on to those relationships as friends and enemies very strongly. So friends can become enemies, enemy can become friends, but we don't really think about it like that. We don't think of how conditions can change so easily. And this way of thinking is a short-term way of thinking. I think that could you check whether the battery, whether the camera is recharging, or is it connected here to the? All right. Okay. Every once in a while it flashes with that charge the battery. All right. Let's see. Thank you.
심진 대외 본번 남라 미미 잠바 동을 면소 본번 따위 시비 심진의 미 저원인지 전부 계디 전주래 장섬 단란 처버가 된 심진 체원인지 송소스.
So let's look at the text. After reading the line, meditate on the great kindness of all beings, it says, Chandrakirti states in his supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way that in general, for a person to belong to the lineage of the great vehicle, love and compassion are vitally important to the beginning, middle, and end of his or her practice. Both are developed in dependence on sentient beings. Love, by focusing on the fact that sentient beings are bereft of happiness, and sympathetic great compassion by focusing on the fact that sentient beings are afflicted by suffering like a raging bonfire. The guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life says that we make offering to whoever has a mind of love also reflects the value of sentient beings.
딘디카야 말했어. 쭉 가르스나 로제 체중 돈. 로제 체중 땡데 용거라서. 로제 체도 로제 총 체바 땡데 용거라서. 어디 돈이 시고래서. 태버 친구 리젠스에 콘도 시바 난신기. 즉 심전 탐지 대두려야 싸움로 땅퉁이 메들려야. 태버 친구 시고래서. 디 랍진 레도스. 라 야시게 담 랍 친구 레도스.
Now, this explanation began with reflecting on what Chandrakirti stated in his supplement to the middle way. He said, for the person to belong to the lineage of the great vehicle, love and compassion are vitally important. So the lineage of the great vehicle, or the Mahayana lineage, the word for lineage in Buddhist terminology can refer to different things. It can also be used to refer to someone's social ranking, or it could be referring to a caste system. It could be referring to your ethnicity and so forth. So rather than applying all of those understanding to the word lineage here, the great vehicle or the Mahayana lineage, the way that we understand that in also thinking of the meaning of Mahayana and Hinayana, or in English, the great vehicle, the lower vehicle, we refer to the lineage of the great vehicle as a lineage that of those that have a vast and extensive mind. This is what it means. So we can develop a mind to different degrees. When a mind is made vast and extensive, to the point in which we can take upon ourselves the responsibility for the welfare of others. Whatever happiness or suffering others experience, it is within the domain of our responsibility. It means that we have made the mind vast and extensive, and as such it is called the great vehicle. So the word great and vehicle doesn't refer to kind of high and low in relation to a social ranking, caste system, or what have you. It just refers to how extensive or how broad you can make your mind.
There the dindigi ro labchingi keuji chayadi sususu lagbalaya yobainza sususu pi samdandalaya gyodro modo pi tamboni pame khoban kedi ko dindi chade dindiji the yomaros the dindigi labchingi keuji susulaya tuyagi lunga yisum chani mele kebainza mi namju chod gyo tuyagi luden chanzanji tobiyobainza 다 딘지 tuyagita tolaya gecheşu karıslana da tonta parsımlaya gecheşu di hani ninji set bir da çogri mebi hani tamjele mebi zao ninji çembote res da ropandan daha tabi da disungores.
So becoming a great being, that effective being, is completely in our hand. It completely depends upon the way that we think. So it's not that you are made like just from birth. It's not that as you are formed in your mother's womb, you become a great being or a Mahayanis. It's completely up to you in your hand to follow those training to develop your body, speech, and mind to be encompassed with an attitude of love. So we've attained a human body, and on the basis of a human body, we can develop love and compassion to others to an utmost extent. So it's important to do that. So it's important to do that, as it says here. It is important at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end. Compassion is important in all along those stages.
Tere bena nganzo michiki meze nama samdama ina da yawarongchik tuydaagdo sungoresira michiki meze na samdama ina ya tongda parsumla ya sewati kechishu chagoresira tongma pigi tajik ame kopanala chabani jene ame ki jamkyong meba ina nganzo da me yong tuyakora yomarwas ame jamkyongla teni ani nganzo tajik pame jamkyongla teni sama yabu chongodas 춘중 권례야지 파미기 잠재 망당이라 소바 아니 쿠유기 잠재 망당이라 소바 두 차원디야 전부 차원디 드니지 빼 아니 샘감래야 아니 마기비 초 망불레댕이 용야도 줘 아니 지 잠재 망당이 개인지 딘디 차고라스 나야 전부 차는 소소소 비기 아니 벤저드비야리 미세기야 가리나 제통이 짐바이나야 아니 지 소수기 따지 로바 아니 초초모 딘디기 아니 잠제 요나 기부도 와서 메세 딘디 매바이나 가두이나 녀다지 차기도 와서 난 다마 게로디네야 아니 미생기 잠경라 땡고다 미생기 잠경 여바이나 파마 긴고지 바이나 수수부고 부두기 잠경 야부 저바이나 그 수수 드로마토나야 아니 부기 잠경라 땡고 기부치니 다 줘야 줘라스 다 디메나 베든 감라 코랑 토니 다지 가드도 싫어시나 삼성소리 깨고야 돼 잠지가 만당을 되는 연구요라스 인자 잠지 생인데 가발라 성당we네 개점부 쇼치
And when the text says that compassion is important, loving care is important at the beginning, middle, and end, we can see how it is relevant to different stages of our life. Like, for example, Isonis has spoken about it before, Isonis the Dalai Lama has spoken about it before, how important it is for us as human beings when we grow up. From the very beginning, as we evolve in our mother's womb, without the care of a mother to her own child in the early stage of development, there would be, for example, on a personal level, there would be no chance, no possibility for us to develop well. It solely depends upon this attitude of love and care that is put into the process of, first of all, our development in our mother's womb, but also in the early stages of childhood. Without that love and care, not only from our parents, but also from the surrounding environment, without that love and care, we not only would find it very difficult to grow involved, but Geshe feels that those that haven't experienced that attitude of love and care, either from the parents or the surrounding, it is likely that later on in their life there would be much unhappiness. So then when we grow up and we can already support ourselves as grown-ups, we have a job, we might have enough money and so forth, and still it is difficult to be happy without having companionship, without friends, which are sustained with an attitude of love and care. Now, so we have love and care in the relationship that we have with our companions. And then when we grow old and we find it difficult, more and more difficult to support ourselves, at some point we need to rely upon others. So when you think about it in relation to, for example, family situation, parents are getting older. There comes a time in which they are no longer able to support themselves or to take care of themselves well, even to the point in which they find it difficult to rise up or walk by themselves. They need to depend upon others. Then when they can rely upon their kids, the children, they can spend the remaining time of their life with a mind that is more at ease, more happy. And that also depends upon love and care. So no matter how we're going to look at it, at love and care and compassion, we can see how for us as human beings, they are important at the very beginning of our life, in the middle of our life, and at the end of our life.
Terda dinti kenechin ki ta chik chamba da tsewa singi di penyo dinti chiyores ro penyo dinti chiyores.
So love and care have such benefits, such advantages.
Ta di ani ta khanda khal teni chungores la ya dire ta ani gyasa chimu shawale ki songju dos chonju le chansam den lan choba ga ten sumjin chewa nyese ya di and the khal teni chungo ya tab di songores.
So if you wonder, it depends upon what do I develop love and concern for others. As Shantideva said in his Bodhisattva way of life, that we make offerings to whoever has a mind of love also reflects the value of sentient beings. So we develop love and care for others. It depends upon sentient beings.
Nyam tabi simjin ro dongar nar simjin dongar mundebi devan dela dongar mundebi dongar nar dengi ani chi simjin gi ngangsul de sambal teni jongo gres ro di khona sambal den jongor mod tabshin kangi gyang ro gyepenjolo sobo katsus yobane ya tanganzu chi nyogo는 nyoyo maras tab delteni yongores tinza 아니 약슈디 아니 냠탑이 심전이야 즉 쳐봤었는데 아니 비기 아니 장경치에 티 딘디기 삼로지나 아니 세원인지 전부디 예토그레스 레그레스 약슈디레스.
So when we then develop love and care for others, we develop them. It depends upon sentient beings which are often find themselves in disadvantageous situation, those who experience unsought suffering, those which are tormented by unsought suffering. So this is how we think of sentient beings, and through that we develop a sense of care and a sense of love to them. So we don't think of sentient beings as those just as sentient beings in general, those that are unrelated to it, sentient beings that we do not depend upon them, as if we can enjoy the conditions, the good conditions that we have without depending upon sentient beings. We don't think about it like that. We think about sentient beings which are tormented by suffering, those that experience unsought suffering. And in relation to this suffering, in relation to these suffering sentient beings, we develop an attitude of care, an attitude of love.
Terda teni nenga chilaya tangan sama logi pigi ta iran chesagi kansa chigdi temba tumbi ombu chagoras tenti gi iran cheyagi kansa di 가을 때니 총벌이었으라니 아니 인지당 장비기 로종라 때니 총벌이었어 심전 탐지기 대도 쿨 셰통에 무연내수 용서고 콘수 중인기 깨우 대양 아니 잠바든 인지 잔주고 샘 생각들 때니 총벌이다스 디직 송거래
In this tradition, the one that we draw the greatest inspiration from is the Buddha, Buddha Shakyamuni. So Buddha Shakyamuni became a Buddha and depends upon love and compassion, training his mind with love and compassion towards all sentient beings and taking upon himself the responsibility for the happiness, the welfare of all sentient beings, the responsibility to remove all their suffering. The comprehension of all phenomena also was developed in depends upon love and care for all sentient beings.
데르다디나 데르마세 잠인지 혼도 송아친기 라나메비 찬주 된드니비 찬주 기셈캬 심전라 때니 게데스 데더 심전 타다기 펜데 말로 버주지 네바도 동안 타다 세월 네바 니 산지 냐지도 통신 잠인지 권의 조베 산지 톰드기 찬주 기셈 게데 셈게반은 현도지 양도조비 찬주 제송소스
So it reads, in addition, the awakening mind, bodhicitta, that seeks to gain unsurpassable enlightenment might be preceded by love and compassion, which in turn are developed in dependence on sentient beings. Saying that only a fully awakened being has the ability to eliminate every last hindrance and misery and establish every single sentient being without exception in a state of happiness and well-being, steered by love and compassion, we should activate the awakening mind, bodhicitta, that wishes to attain that completely awakened state of being. Maitreya's ornament for clear realization says, generating the awakening mind is the desire for completely perfected full awakening for others' sake.
다들 뭐 로션 다들이 두분 오버시세야지 송고도다 두분 오버시 디긴nen가로디 카르레스 라운디 다 심전 탐제기 다지 되든 드버치기 인삼비 삼로 영이 짐바이나 당부 아니 탐제다 비게 아니 탐지 로라 바바치 라 탐지 가와 용야지 차국으로 왔다 디 체도다 doing over 시세디 송구요레스
Now, the next section also explains the practice that is called the 4 ways of gathering. In that, if you want to be of full benefit to others in terms of accomplishing happiness and welfare for the sake of others, you need to find ways for others to relate to you. You need to find ways in which others will feel a sense of affection or a sense of closeness to you. And in order to do that, we practice the 4 ways of gathering.
레드디만 간단스 로션 디서 다 파르도 좀 투장스 디 민케는 라전 디서 심전라 때니 개바당 내바당 고는 페바첼라 대단한 주비 때 잔주 심기 자와 잠인지 종이 때 샘기 줘봐 랑긴고 남 심전라 때니 종이 데브 산지기 균드비 균소 탐지 심전라 때 ngombo zobo sanjini hundu gyumi chegin tilekya tenchayu simjinla teni zhongde dona teba chimbi gyunde tamji ki tsawa simjin cheban zamba te migi simjin tanaya dada nila teni da sanji nyudun gyuroshi chanshi chambi tsugi ta she son sos.
So the section that explains the 4 ways of gathering says the 4 ways of amassing disciple, giving, speaking pleasantly, teachings, and acting in accordance with the teachings, and the 6 transcending paramitas or perfections, generosity, ethics, patience, enthusiasm, meditative stability, and discriminating intelligence or wisdom are also developed in dependence on sentient beings, as is abiding in and repeatedly enhancing the awakening mind. Therefore, we can see that the basis of our conduct, the source of the awakening mind, love and compassion, the basis of practice, the generation of altruistic mind, and the essence of our own training arise in dependence on sentient beings. The accumulation of all manner of causes for accomplishing the fruit of Buddhahood depends upon sentient beings. Even after the highest attainment of complete awakening, the practice of enlightened activity, which comes about in an unbroken stream, arises and depends upon the sentient beings from whom it is done. Essentially, the root of everything in the great vehicle, the cause and the result, is concern for sentient beings, as Shantideva says in his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. Whenever I turn my gaze upon a sentient being, thinking I shall fully awaken through depending upon this being, I should look at her with open-hearted love.
Terda dizu nenga roju reshas ro tanganzu tan namju dindro samgorda pena nganzu sunda jing bayna ya mishemba jigi yakpu thonya gi chedu ta chaw chigi yoras ro mishemba gi yakpu ju thona soso mishembe yakpu ju thona magang chi yomaras ta mishemba gi yakpu thonya zebu thonya gi chedu ta ani kale penjos teni nyabcha gyabta dramata shigors the yina ya anji semba de tsama ji kematuna kontro dan shedan dan jacha shuk chambo shuj ton droshawaina ani karmu karji kar chebaina ya mi sheng yakbun tonsedi kabu berendos ta jambo ji che sosu gi lega kar chewana ya jenla ya netse meba ro jenla ya maneba chona chik shen ya pen toyagi chawa dindiji toni mizit kiye tubana ani misu tona ya misu da tuna ya gabu chigiri yabu tongres ro gyashi yadamba ani ko ngone gi ta chik 장부 dang denba chamzik nyamle yongingi miji da tu somana rangshin gi gaw yongde dindie yongu yores ro penna gyawarum chitawre.
Now, when we look at ourselves, we can see that we have a wish to be regarded well by others. May others think well of me. So if we want others to think well of us, if we do not like to be disliked by others, if we don't want to be disliked by others, we need to then look at what we do. If we only suffice with taking care of our physical appearance, right? Thinking that, if only I dress well, or I kind of take care of my physical appearance, or if I have enough money, if I have enough possessions and so forth, others will come to regard me well, without really making sure that we clean our mind, that we keep a clear mind or a clean mind. If we fall prey to strong forms of anger and attachment, it doesn't really matter what we do. If we dress well, if we take care of our physical appearance, if we amass money or what have you, if we are subject to strong manifestations of anger and attachment, others will not think well of us. Whereas when we develop this attitude in which we first of all abstain from harming others, and even more than that, whatever we do is beneficial to others, we act in benefiting others, then others come to like you. If you're speaking honestly, if you're being truthful with others, if you treat them with an attitude of love and care, others naturally come to appreciate you. They regard you well. So look at, for example, we can find examples of beings that are like that. Like, for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Shenya perna shinsa shindu shembala sabyon chongpo tamni lebar songshin kyana tendo sang mawanjon tongni shinsa sangbola chi chede cheba tar simjingi shinla chamyinji chanjugu sem chindu dowa shiyu sabyon chongpo tamni lebar songs kyana tenyin tarchin sanji chomdendigi kongpang jongwa tongni simjingi shinla chede su chede pangshan dugba yidongwe namba chindu tongni kubar chede chonjule 대실 심진 신단의 야위 신신 tumbe송 대다 그저 망부식 대들 푸숨 파르친 심전 남다 야왈데 산지 촌룬 자왈라 야라 그저 대진도 심전람 지출 삼비연데 랑김 시송 시소.
Moreover, if, for instance, we plant healthy seeds in an extremely fertile field, guarding them well against marauders, thank you, we will reap a bountiful harvest. Understanding this, we will treat our fine field with great care. Likewise, having planted the potent seeds of love, compassion, the awakening mind, the six transcending perfections, and the four means of amassing disciples in the field of sentient beings, if we look after them well, they will give rise to the state of fully awakened being, a transcendent subduer, a Bhagavan, fulfilling the two purposes of ourselves and others. Understanding this, we will take great care of the field of sentient beings, and seeing them as pleasing and attractive, we will respect them. The Gato Bodhisattva of life says, therefore, the Mighty One has stated that there are the field of sentient beings and the field of Buddhas, for many who have pleased them have thereby reached perfection. Since the qualities of full awakening are derived from sentient beings and conquerors alike, how can we act respectfully towards conquerors, Buddhas, and not towards sentient beings? We should not foster such an attitude.
신야 심전 산지기 교단 레버집인 종콩순 통네 산지기 교단 레버집인 종콩순 통네 심전라 최신도 거외데 대녀리 용된 초조 지구의 용된 차신 차점 가시라 나나와 델라 주든든 감송 보연 총원교 산지 춘초 기비시 심전 남라 예배나 데다 잠기 차도네 심전 최자 리버 규르 source.
In addition, seeing sentient beings as a source of cause and result of full awakening, they are all worthy of our highest respect. The same text says, even if in order to pay respect for someone in whom a mere portion of good qualities of the unique collection of excellence exists, we were to present the three realms, it would be insufficient. Since all sentient beings have a portion of Buddha's supreme qualities, for this reason alone, sentient beings are worthy of respect.
어디랬다 딘디기 체들아 딘디기 체도 땅안주 초사 접장사에 제가 그랬다 딘디기 삼바삼부치라 미야부치 아니 초나 삼니드니 피기다 만년 팅고 가시지 담바이나야 아니 쇼지기 자발랍 침보레스 로 디기 개왕하지 켈량가지 바이나 아니 개원이 개와균니 펜도용데바 딘디치 아니 세델야 지 아니 개와 파지 뇽르도 데바 아니 지금 소수 자와 가르치나야 신뢰의 팬디 드통인기 아니 니바여 대바 딘디 땐데 연구여서레스 아니 딘딜 때문에 딱 많이 됐스 단토가나 배야구여서레스로.
So in our practice, we build up the accumulation of the collections, we purify negativities and obscurations, and we develop the wish to become, may I become like that. And if with that attitude of accumulating the collections, purifying negativities and obscurations, thinking, may I become like that, if you supplement that also with the recitation of the Mani Mantra, a few rounds of Mani Mantra, and incorporate that into your practice, then first of all, it will be beneficial in a succession of lifetimes. Over from this lifetime to the next, you will find benefit from that practice, but also it will affect this life, in that whatever we do in this life, we will encounter less obstacles. We'll also find out we develop a better ability to affect others. Was there a question here somewhere? So if Geshe could expand on the steps for meditating upon the kindness of sentient beings, yeah? Chezandila sentient tamche kading gomba di Rimba-jene kandechi gongo gres. Bena rimba tabo digom, niba digom, sumba digom, dendechi shachi dwe.
Je da di nganzu chonju na la song de di de je sro da chedan pi da 당보 소줄라야 지 아니 체디 류징인게 아니 지 파마래야 아니 삼단은 저거에디 백해침으로서 체디 파마디 개침보다 아니 딘지 아니 예동원 가주 동안 뒤쪽이 아니 개침보 동안 뒤쪽이 아니 다 첸데자 마인비기다 지 깨와 현대 생기지 아니 파마 진용에서 로 남바직 돈 상담다레스 들어 아니 디조 개침보 임바 도 시온디다 아니 섬진시나 카페는 로트게지 용구여서레스.
Yeah, you find instructions on meditating on the kindness of others in different texts, such as, for example, in Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. But Geshe reckons that one way to approach that, first off, would be to think of those that were kind to you in this life, those that gave you your body, your parents, and to think of how your parents were important to you in this life. And through that, to develop a sense of affection, to kind of develop a sense of closeness and affection to your parents. And then, at least when you approach that from a Buddhist perspective, in thinking that we have been taken different rebirths in cyclic existence since start without beginning and up until now, we shift the focus to other living beings and recognize or regard them as having been our parents before. So we draw upon the affection that we have to our parents in this life, and then we look at others and think that others have been that kind to me also in other lifetimes. And through that, we develop a sense of affection to them. No. So Geshe mentioned Shantideva text, but actually what he had in mind was Atisha's lamp for the path of enlightenment, who in this text, Atisha taught the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions for developing bodhicitta. And first off, recognizing sentient beings as having been our mothers, and then starting to reflect upon the kindness of sentient beings.
Thank you.
Shall we leave it here for now? So let's dedicate the virtue we have accrued in this session. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the Snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion, to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the subduer's moral way, who serves in the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading my gymnastic victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Preserver of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Thank you.